In this video, we're going to break down the arrangement to Make My Day by ESSE, so you can take the arrangement principles and techniques and use them in your own tracks to make bangers that go off on the dance floor. This track is a great example of macro simplicity and micro complexity. The big things that happen are very simple and very clear, but it's all the little details like in the drop that show meticulous attention to detail. Even if the producer executed this in a flow state, just kind of like feeling it out, it's still cool to break it down and see the underlying structure. So here's a piece of the track in case you haven't heard. If you can't believe it, of course, we have ourselves another HG2 at the top, because this is one of the best storytelling formulas for music, like the 3-act structure of a movie. And this track is doing, especially the main break and build when we get there. I really like that thing. I like the whole track, but that main break and build is pretty flawlessly executed, I would say, like, especially if you want to use this as a reference. But let's dive in. What is the HG2 formula? HG2 formula is just the basic, it's just my term for the basic kind of like boilerplate template for a tech house track, even house tracks, bass house, probably some techno, but especially tech house and tech house. So first we get a little bit of an intro, right, over here, and then we start to introduce the bass line somewhere around here. And then that's the BD for bass drop. And then around break 1 right here, that's where we go into a break. People kind of are shuffling. You introduce the hook. Then you get into HG1. That stands for hook drop 1. This is right here where we kind of put the hooks over the freaking groove. And then here is the main break and build. This is right here, MBB, main break and build. And then after the main break and build, we're building, boom. We go into that last drop, which is hook drop 2, putting the hooks over the groove, HG2. And then we go into outro. All right, so intro, bass drop, break 1, hook drop 1, main break and build, hook drop 2, outro. And along the way, there's different things to do. And, it's just a really powerful storytelling structure. Especially if we think about arrangement as storytelling of the hooks and groove over time, how the hooks and groove develop over time to take the listener on an exciting roller coaster journey. So we're going to map all this out using MIDI clips and just see what is there, how it evolves, how it changes, how it's exciting, and then see how it's kind of checking off the little boxes for each section to make sure that it is maximally exciting and engaging for the dance floor. So let's freaking go. So right away, we're getting some cool glitchy stuff. You throw your drums through like Tantra, Infiltrator, any of those kind of multi-effects like step sequencer things, beat repeat in Ableton, you're going to get some kind of cool textures like this. So this is just going to be the intro, which is going to be beats. And so let's just map this out right here. Awesome. A little bit of bass shots in there, like a little bit of FME sounds, and like that's cool. It's just someone playing around with like glitch plugins, and it just sounds cool. But hopping over here, we're in the intro. What are we trying to do here? Intros and outros are for DJs, not producers. Keep it simple for the DJ. So one of the things to do is just to do the beats. Just introduce the beats so the DJ can mix in. Unique thing, definitely unique thing here with all the kind of glitchies. Technical term right there, glitchies. Identifiers, same thing. I would, these are pretty close. A section, B section. They actually do an A section, B section in the intro because here it's just like high pass. Then we go into the full kicks right here. All right, so just to kind of show that a little bit more. So a little bit of a quote edit. Edit is where you kind of just like, at the end of 8 bars or something, just do something, usually removing the low end. Here, they're removing the kick. This is very silly that I'm talking about this in the intro, by the way, because you could totally just steamroll this through 16 bars and be totally fine. Because again, this is just for DJs. But here we're getting a full kick. And so we got an A section, B section right there, a high pass to full in the drop. And by the way, just if this is your first time seeing something like this, number one, you could download it. But number two, I made this years ago. So this is not made for this track. This was made years ago. And we're just going to see how this track kind of executes on the kind of checkboxes and the formula in a unique and creative way, you know? And so let's keep on going here. So you can hear a little bit of a string come up. Let's just map that because I know the string kind of comes back. Strings are great for just building tension, usually going to be played in the fifth of the key, either the tonic or the fifth, commonly the fifth, because strings add tension. And the fifth is going to be add a little bit more tension, obviously, than the tonic. And then we're just rolling into the low end there with the bass. We got that little bass hit before the beat, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, just coming up right there, the bass. That's kind of cool. Gives that kind of like rolling into it kind of feel. All right, so then now that is the intro. All right, so what we'll also do is just kind of map out the high level here on the arrangement. So there is the intro right there. So we'll do intro. And awesome. So now we're getting into the bass drop, which in this track is going to be really short. So bass drop, just dropping the bass. Cool. So obviously we need to have this bass track right here. So let's go like this. So to bass. Actually, that's fine. Cool. Okay, string is full. This is just kind of gaining up. Gain up, I should write. Cool. All right, so now that we're getting into the bass drop, is there any motif? A motif is kind of like a hummable drum melody in a way. A motif could be anything, but when I write motif in the intro, since this usually has to do with beats, is there some kind of rhythmic motif in the beats section? You know, and let's just kind of hear. I wouldn't really call that a motif. It's not something, all that kind of glitchy stuff. It's not really a motif. It's mostly like this kind of chaotic ear candy. But like a motif would be something like do 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 do. Joshua Freaks is a really good example of a motif from in a recent track. But all right, cool. Now, when we get into the bass drop, what's the goal here? So we're done with the intro. Intro hook tease really quick. Sorry, I'm bouncing. Is over here. Is there something that teases what the hook is going to be in the track? And there's nothing really yet. Nothing. This is all just kind of like DJ mixing with the kind of textural stuff in the groove. All right, so in the bass drop is where we introduce the bass line and only the bass line. We want to teach people how to move, groove, and dance to the track before we throw the hooks on top. That's what the hook drops are for. The hook drops are for when we finally put the hooks on top of the groove, and that's going to be right over here where you have vocals, synths, whatever. Now they're on top of the groove, but over here, just introduce the bass line. Number one, not to overwhelm the listener, because if you are introducing them to the groove and hooks at the same time, it's like, oh my God, my brain is fried. Even more fried than it already is potentially in the club. And then for DJs though, also, they might be mixing out of a track. So if you have two competing hooks that clash, the DJ just might not mix into the track. You know, you just want to keep it simple here. Just introduce kind of one thing at a time. So here we got the tops, here we got the kick, here we got the bass line coming in, and then we're going to move into the hooks introduced here in the break. But we're going to get that. That's ahead of ourselves. Let's keep playing. Ooh, okay, so a little bit of taste of what's to come. So with these kind of chords, which is totally fine, like that would work over another track mixing in, you just get these chords. So chord stabs, awesome. And let's just kind of map out where those are. Those obviously from the original track. Okay, so I'm not going to map out the actual notes, just kind of where they happen. Let's see. Is that on, what is that? It does sound like it's landing on the beat here rather than on that 16th. Okay, cool. So there we go. So we got some chords right there. One cool thing is you could hear in the background, there's like this clap bomb that plays when that chord lands on, you're going from high to low. So tension release, basically, even at this small level. Music is fundamentally tension release at all scales. Here is tension, here's release at the macro scale, right? Here is tension release at the micro scale, even within a chord change right there. So, but when that gets released, you can hear there's a little clap bomb to accent that release, and it just accents that kind of feeling. Our producer's sitting there going like, I really need to accent this release from the tension. No, of course not. It's just a feeling. Tension release is a feeling, but there are ways that you can, oh my gosh, I was about to say operationalize it, but that's true. There are things you could do to kind of like do this stuff consciously. Like, yeah, that is tension release. Maybe let me accent that moment. Little shots right here, little teases, and that's actually the next part of this. So typically in the hook drops, you can that's where you're going to put the main hooks over the groove, but we can start to tease the hooks leading into the break, and that's exactly what you're going on here. We're not getting the main hooks of the track, but we're getting little teases, little pieces of the hooks to come. All right, so here we get a little bit of a vocal shot, Vox shot. Oh, right there, right? Cool. And then I might start mapping out those little bass shots. We'll see how prominent of a role they play in the track. But all right, there we go. We're getting this guy again. But you can kind of see there's this kind of clap fill. I'm not going to map it out right now. Again, if it comes back in a big way, I will. But just notice the sequencing. Like one of the biggest takeaways from all these track breakdowns, especially in the context of me helping producers, is the very clear presentation of sounds over time, or the very clear sequencing of sounds over time. And so if we just kind of look at that, we could just kind of map it out, and I highly recommend doing this. You don't have to do a full-on MIDI map. Like I'm not even doing a full MIDI map. Like I'm not even breaking down the beats. Like I've done that in the past. I think I have them posted somewhere too, where you just literally try to map out every single song. You can learn every single sound. You can learn so much. But even if you just map out the when sounds happen in the drop, for example, it can give you a really good starting point for your own ideas. So let's see. So you get that little entry at the break at the start. So boom, right? You got that little dun-dun-dun, little kind of bass kind of thing. I don't even know, just a little bit of a rhythmic thing. Dun-dun-dun. Right there. All right. And then just a little sound there, right? That's kind of like in the drums. You can even name what these are. So kind of like a bass entry. A different sound than the underlying bass, but it's still a bass nonetheless. This would be bass rhythm. It kind of goes dun-dun-dun. So it kind of technically starts right there. And this right here, again, this is kind of like some kind of like drum thing. Again, you don't even need to be specific. The more kind of high level you are, the better, actually, because then it gives you're not going to get too zoomed in going one-to-one on a reference. Right here, again, you're getting a little tiny like skip in the drums or in a bass shot. So right there. So I'll just kind of zoom in and call this bass, and then we're going to move in because we're getting real detailed, or zoom out, I guess. You can hear that little kind of, double kick. And then we have the chords, of course. So we'll do dub kick and then chords. Right. This is all a very small mapping too. Like, okay, plus clap bomb. Whatever the sound is. Impact, you can call it. Who cares? Clap fill. All right. Clap fill. So this is going to be some kind of bass shot, and it looks like we might need a second one, right? Just to kind of get everything. So this would be vocal, although we already mapped that out. I'm just showing you what you could do. So this is bass rhythm, all right? And then bass layer rhythm, whatever, vocal. Same thing back here, watch. So bum, ba-dum, bum. So this exact same thing starts to play right there, and you'll start to see, hey, there's patterns to the stuff, which is the whole point of me breaking these things down anyway, is that this is even a higher level pattern in and of itself, the HC2 formula. And same thing, just got repeated over here. Let's just move this over to about right there. Even that little bass hit. Double kick, once again, we're just repeating things, which, of course, otherwise it would just be pure freaking chaos, and that's not what you want. Now we're getting an edit, so you can see that the kind of kick goes away. But anyway, the point is, you can kind of map this stuff out for yourself, and it'll give you direction when you're producing. So, you know, when you're sitting there staring at a blank project and there's an infinite amount of possibilities, by mapping something out, you immediately start to restrict the possibilities of what you can start playing with, and that at least gets you going. So let's keep on going. Okay, so that's really cool. So this kind of like grows, this is kind of like a verb bomb. And this is, so I'm just going to do an edit. Again, I'm not trying to be too specific. Just want to get the high level here. And so this is like a nice little edit. So kick goes away. So we could do like kick cut. Again, edit is just something that happens typically at the end of 8 bars, 16. It's usually the low end goes away in some way. Here, the kick is going away. The bass is still playing in full. But it just kind of prepares the listener for a change that's coming up. That's really it. Or it serves to kind of reset the next 8 bars. Okay, and so then we're going to get... So this is going to be kind of like the chord stabs 2, kind of like, you know what we should do? We should do like main chord stabs. Dun, 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 because that's like that melody, you know? Okay, so now we're getting into break 1, and this is, let's come over here. So, bass drop. Did we get the bass line? Yes, we did. A section, B section, no, because this is not 16 bars. This is only 8 bars. So none of that applies. Corresponding drum lift, no new drums came in when the bass came in. The bass just rolled in. Punk said it's ear candy. So I'll just say ear candy. Absolutely. You can hear it. We're just mapping it out. Entry, a little bit. And an entry is just like this sound. Boom. That little hit right there. Kind of a minor one, you know, but it's still there. It just accents that moment. And that's what an entry does. It accents that one. All right. So bass drop, introducing the bass line. There we go. And all the little things that we talked about. Break 1 now. Now we're moving into break 1. Break 1 is where we take the groove away in some way and start to introduce the main hooks. The idea is similar to the bass drop, but it's completely flipped from the bass drop. So in the bass drop here, we introduce the groove character of the track. Again, if we're looking at arrangement as storytelling between the two main characters of hooks and groove, then we introduced the groove character right here. Now, the groove character, you can literally see it, goes away in some way. Not fully. We'll talk about that. It's not fully away, but especially the low end, people aren't dancing as much. But now that the groove character is kind of taken a step back, now the hook characters move forward. All right, so here we introduce the groove character. Here we introduce the hook character. And that is what the break is all about, giving people a little bit of a break. Now that they're not dancing, they need to be focused on something. Otherwise, they're going to be really, really bored. We don't want people to be bored on the dance floor. That will clear the dance floor. They'll start going to the bathroom. They'll start going buying drinks. They'll start calling their mom or something, saying that everything's all good or something. But yeah, and then on the dance floor, now we have the break. So we hold back on the groove and we introduce the hook. So number 1, give them a break. So how are they doing that? This is what I would call a cliff dive. Now, a cliff dive is where you dive into basically nothing. So you get that big stab. Okay, and so... Okay, but give them a break. So absolutely. So the groove just goes away. It's just gone momentarily. Slows things down. We get that string. Let's bring the string over. And then here what we do is we keep the groove alive. All right, and so let's check that out. So typically you'd have the groove keep going, and they do, because then that kind of comes back up. So boom, we get that big dramatic cliff dive, and then the drums come back up to keep that rhythm going, keep the momentum going from the track. This still holds that momentum, that big chord stab that plays out, that doesn't kill the momentum. It's like communicating the momentum, right? Feel it. Cool. And then we're getting these guys again, the bump, 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 to start bringing things back in. We're getting these kind of bass stabs. Are these the bass stabs that are playing throughout? It does sound like it. Okay, so those bass stabs are important. Let's get these in here. So bass stab. Okay, let's go ahead and color this. So we have this guy right here, and these are just kind of playing on the 1 and the 4, it seems like, right here. Yep. And so it's just playing on the first bar, and then I guess technically the 5th bar, but around the 4 bar mark. At the 4, what I mean is just halfway through. So a little bit of delay on there. Down the middle, the stab is wide, but the delay is down the middle. Okay, now here, the drums go away, but then they low pass up. So let's just do low pass up from nothing, we'll say. Okay, I created this. I don't know why. All right, so we'll delete it. Okay, so this is just tops. And then here we get like the kick, small kick. We'll do like high pass kick, although it sounds a little bit like there's some low end in there. High pass kick plus tops. So we're still getting the bass stabs right here. So the cool thing is that they're starting to just work towards this moment right here. Breaking it down, just that big epic kind of dramatic moment, and then we're kind of building up, stepping up, and then we're going to get hit with the main vocal right here. So this is just a very dramatic way of introducing the vocal. And when we get there, I want to kind of cut this and just show you the difference on how it would feel, just having that dramatic moving towards the vocal, giving that vocal almost like this massive importance by just making the listener wait for it. All right, here we go. And then now we have the main vocal. So let's go to Vox main. Pump up the jam, pump it up while your feet are stumping. All right, so this is all still going, kick, and then also the string, and this, and then also the bass stabs are still going, so let's bring those over. Oh, I'm sorry, they're playing every 2 bars. Okay, I said every on the 1 and the 4, but yeah, this is actually every 2 bars. Okay. Pump up the jam, pump it up while your feet are stumping. And the jam is pumping, look ahead, the rider jumping. Pump it up a little. So nothing changing in the surrounding context. That's so critical because now there might be something that pulls us into the next section over here, but keeping that context static for the vocal, because full 100% focus is on the vocal right now. People are feeling this. They're kind of moving, shuffling to the background groove, but the attention is 100% focused on the vocal right now. If people know the song, they're singing it. If they don't know the song, they're listening to it. Everyone in the club is focused on that. Trying to distract them from that, it would be the absolute wrong move right here. Because a lot of times producers can get nervous. Like, is enough going on there? Yes. You have to understand that everyone's attention is fully dialed on that vocal at that time. There's nothing else needed to be done in this moment. Pump it up a little more, get the party going on the dance floor. See, because that's where the party rider jump in. I wanted to see if they were doing the stabs. They're not even doing the stabs right here. And there might even be space for it. Dun, 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 dun. You could do that, but not even that is there. The stabs are here, but that's just kind of integrated into the groove, you know? It's just kind of accenting these kind of structural markers. But there's not even those chords right here because nothing is distracting from the vocal. Nothing. All right. So right there, now we're starting to get a little bit of a change because an edit is preparing the listener like, hey, something is about to change. So what are they doing? So drums go away. There's a little bit of white noise that comes down. So let's do white noise. And now we're getting the chord change. Or we're getting those little chords right here. See, cause that's where the party's at, and you find out if you do that. On this dance floor. See, cause that's where the party's at, and you find out if you do that. And you find out if you do that. All right, so beat goes away, and now we're just suspended. So much tension happens when you remove that fundamental anchor of the track, which is the the drums, or especially the kick. There's a little bit. So you can hear that snare is low passed right there. So snare, low passed. Now, I don't know if that's a snare roll that's going to kind of come up in volume, but or if it's just part of the snare that plays in the track. We'll find out. But so what do we have right now? Right now we're just removing the kick, a lot of the drums. That creates so much tension. And then what we need to do now at this point is to build tension. So if we come back over to the break, they gave us a break, right? We're not dancing anymore. They kept the groove alive, right? Here's the groove. Now there was a cliff dive into everything. Big dramatic moment, just everyone's paying attention. The whole dance floor is just like, whoa, what just happened? And then pulling us back into the groove, and that just kind of leads us into the main vocal, introduce the main hook, absolutely. And then once these things are taken care of, you've given them a break, you're keeping the groove going, you're keeping it alive, you introduce the main thing for the listener, then you're ready to kind of start building tension. And that's where we are right here, all right? So this all right here is just these steps, literally these two steps, boom, give them a break, keep the groove alive, okay, cool. And then here, introduce the main thing. Now these can be accomplished at the same time. You could do the same time. Here, they're being separated, which is cool. And that's why I want to see if we just go like this. If I just take this guy and move this over here. Come on. Oh my gosh. What the heck? And let's just go like this. It's going to sound a little bit weird, but... Pump up the jam, pump it up while your feet are stumped. Now, you could imagine ways to make that work, right? Like a reverse vocal right here. Jam, pump it up. Right? Maybe a reverse cymbal too. Like that might be enough just to get it kind of like working. But this is much more dramatic. And it just puts that vocal on a pedestal right there because of having to wait for it. Okay. And then, all right, so that's it. We've introduced the main thing, and now we're building tension. How are we building tension? One, just removing the kind of drums and the kick just suspends the track. People know, like, man, that just creates that kind of tension. It's just this fundamental uneasiness, just kind of like floating off in like space, or in the ocean without an anchor is just scary, and that's kind of the feeling here. But then that sets up a huge contrast because obviously when we get into the drop, you get the ultimate stability. All right, so instability, stability, just high level contrast. What else? Okay, so I'm going to put this on another one. We'll do Vox rap here, and then this is going to be Vox sing. Da-na, da-na-na, put your booty on the floor. String is still in there. This is a little bit of a delay. I'll just put a delay on here. Don't. Okay, so this isn't just snare. This is tops, low pass up. Hear that little clap fill right there? That's just in the drums group that they're low passing up. Okay, you can hear the white noise up right here. So let's just do this, and then we'll do white noise up, and then here this is just white noise down. And you find out if you do that. It could be up, but you know, whatever. Okay, another thing is you can hear that this vocal is growing. It's a vocal, or I'll just write verbing. Okay, so the effect stops, string is gone, and then we had the beat go away. All right, so let's look at this. So build tension. How do you build tension? Rep, roll, rise, grow. Rep, roll, rise, grow. Hook repetition, snare roll, kick roll, crash roll, rise, anything that's going up. Could be tonal riser, white noise riser, cut off on a bass opening or a synth opening, something pitching up like a vocal, grow, growing the space either through reverb or delay. These are just classic ways to build tension. This is a menu. You don't have to do all of them, but any single one of them will build tension. So what are they doing? Are they doing a rep? Not really. There's no hook repetition here. There is obviously this vocal is repetitive because it's kind of repeating itself. But what I'm talking about, if it was like, like that would be more of a rep. Roll, there's no roll here, like kick roll, crash roll, snare roll, nothing like that. Rise, yes, there is a riser. You hear the white noise right there. The low pass on the drums coming up is a riser, and then growing the space on the vocal, absolutely. Okay, cool. And then here we have... Okay, and then here we have the main stabs. So, okay, so now we're getting into this transition, right? You can see how this is kind of like chronological. So when we're over here, how do we transition in the drop? Well, in this case, they're using what I call a PIPO transition. That PIPO stands for pattern, interrupt, pay off, P-I-P-O. And so here we just have a building pattern. You could feel it. There is tension building right now. That pattern of building gets interrupted. So pattern, interrupt, right? That interrupt happens right here. It just stops. When that stops, when that happens, we all just freeze and pay attention, right? It just hijacks the brain. And then once that happens and everyone's paying attention, deliver the payoff moment here and then explode into the drop. And so that's what it is. You have pattern, interrupt right here, pattern, interrupt, pay off, and then you explode into the drop. And so mode transition is just momentum. So if you were just going to go build, and explode into the drop, that's much, much, much less common because pipos are extremely powerful transitions. Okay, atmosphere, sure. You know, I shouldn't say sure, actually. This is pure atmosphere right here. Like there's a new space defined. Listen to the atmosphere here, or the vibe here. It's still pretty atmospheric, like, but here, wide open, right? So huge atmosphere. A little bit of an entry, absolutely into the break. This guy right here, that's stab. So this is just like a massive entry right here. So let's see, massive entry. This is a really dramatic entry. This is like a quintessential entry because, you know, an entry is just like announcing something, you know, like announcing a section, announcing the break, announcing a drop. And that's exactly what this is doing. This is announcing the break. Okay, cool. And so you can see in break one, they're just checking all the boxes, but of course is done in a very creative and unique way. This is not like, this is just high level. This is like abstract, right? Like this, no one has any claim over any of these things other than human perception. You know what I mean? And so you could do all of this stuff, like, but just do it in your own way that makes sense for the track. All right. And so, okay, so now we're getting into the hook drop. Hook drop is where we put the hooks over the groove. So now let's see what we have to do over here. This is where the quote story begins. We've introduced the groove character over here. We introduced the hook character over here. Now they come together in the first drop. Right? So you think of like introducing character A, introducing character B, or even better, like a sitcom, introducing like Ross from Friends, introducing Rachel from Friends, and then the question is, hey, are Ross and Rachel going to get together? And then that question gets answered right there, and they come together, which is, and then they break up and then they get back together again, literally like the sitcom, but you could think of the arrangement in the exact same way. It's just it's us just consuming things over time, stories over time. Okay, so first most important thing is hooks over groove. But let's get back to this. We introduce the groove character in the bass drop. We introduce the hook character in break one. Now the hooks in hook drop one, we bring the groove and hooks together for the first time. This is what people want. They want hooks over groove. And so this is why this pays off. Not just because we're building tension, quote, over here, but because the listener knows, hey, I was introduced to something here. I was introduced to something here. Now it's time for these two to come together to just, create super excitement, maximal excitement, to use that word again. Maximum, from the Chris Lake and Chris Lorenzo song. Okay, so here though, just going into groove, I'm curious, is there any kind of lift or elevation over the bass drop? So what's interesting is there's a lot more little things going on here, ear candy. This is almost just simple, minimal, powerful, effective, like you have all this stuff going on, and then this is pretty straightforward. I love that. That's a great contrast. Now, yeah, there's other stuff going on, but not as much as the little kind of glitchy things over there. All right, so here we are in drop one. So let's just do a hook, drop one. And awesome. So one of the things we're expecting to see here is the HT1 equation. This is just where we get the groove and the hooks coming together for the first time. That's basically what that means. A section, B section is something that we can look out for, and we'll just see if we're getting those high-level things. So here we go. So obviously we have the beats, we have the bass, we're getting those chord stabs that we're playing over here, plus that kind of like little clap bomb playing on the release. We're also getting the bass stabs, the wide bass stabs right here. That little kind of shot that we were kind of paying attention to earlier when we were mapping out the small things. Maybe I'll map out the clap fill because it's kind of a big deal, right? And I'll map out like bass shot too. Or you know what? I'll just put it on this one. I'll just put this. So right there is where this happens. So here we have a clap fill. Color that orange. All right. And then let's see. Yeah, there's all sorts of little things in there that you can map out, but that would just take a lot of time, and obviously you can hear it, but which is why we're just going to keep the most important things. But you can hear all these little spaces are filled with things. So let's see. And then we got the main chords right here. All right. Okay, and then we're going to get the voxing here, but this is going to be affected. All right, so this is a little bit of a rep. So this is like effects on here. So this guy is call response up and down. If you listen, like watch. So let's just go up on this, just like that. Make my day. So. So it's kind of playing on that 16th right there. So. But again, this is call up or spawn down. Classic, you know? Okay, and then we're getting a little bit of a glitch over here in the vocal. Okay, cool. And then... So just something like that. But what I wanted to show you is that, number one, we're getting A section, B section here, because this is mostly just like groove. And let's just call it ear candy. And then over here, we have the B section, which is going to be a vocal lift. Okay, cool. And so, boom. So I feel like I'm covering too many things at once. So high level, this is just groove, and then we get a vocal lift. All right. And so that's A section, B section. If we come over here, boom. And then so right here, groove, hook, just very standard type of A section, B section that you can get. But if we zoom into the vocal, what's going on with the vocal? The vocal is just playing. And so it's playing the title vocal. But it's obviously just repeating the title over and over, but it's doing it in call response. You know, that's in the original track, of course, but I really like it. Like, just throwing the title vocal call response over the drop, just hit them with it, and it's awesome. Now, and so at the very top, like, that's what's happening, is we have the groove, and then we had the vocals call response, and then towards the end, we're going to get that edit again, and you can hear how the vocal just kind of switches up, just glitches up. And then the same thing happens right here, where we get that kind of reverb bomb that we were getting over here in the bass drop. And then here the beats go away. And so then here the bass opens up. Okay, and then we're going to the main break and build with the strip, and we'll look at that in just a second. But I do want to map out those things because they're really cool. And I wrote ear candy up here, but technically this would be more like punks is what I would call them. And so let's break that down, because this is actually a really good example of punks. And so let's map it out. So here we go. So here we have the kind of little drum hit. I'm not even sure. It's kind of like a rim-ish. So I'm just going to call it that, rim-ish. So there we go. And then we have another bass stab. So let's get this here. We'll just call this short. So that guy plays right there. Then we have a double kick that I want to map. So just for this section, I'm not going to do this for the whole song, but then we're going to have a double kick. And so that's just going to be right here. So right here, but it's actually playing a 16th note rhythm too. So dun-dun-dun. Okay, so it's just goes technically a dotted. So if we change this to 16ths, C3, here we go. And then going over to the offbeat, over here, what's going on? 16th. What am I missing? Okay. Oh, needs to be longer. So then over here, we just want to have this like that. Boom, just like that. So that's a double kick. Okay, and then here we have like kind of like a clap bomb, or I'll just call it impact, just to use kind of more general term. There we go. Okay, clap fill. So that's on the offbeat and then on the 16th. So that's going to be here and then right there. Okay, let's check on the bass short stab. Where's this guy playing? So you can hear that right there. So those two are playing together. So this same sound is playing over here. So this guy is playing right there. And then what else? So bump, bump, bump. And then we're going to get that entry again. And then we get that vocal chop. Okay, let's get in here and dissect this real quick. So when are these things happening? Okay, so chop's happening on the beat right there. Okay, and then we're going to get the entry again, or like this bass shot. Okay, and then let's just duplicate all this out, including the kick right here. So let's see what's continuing. So here we get the entry, or like the bass stab. I'll do bass stab wide, although the other one's wide too. So little rim thing, little 16th bass shot, double kick, chord. We got the impact. Wait a minute. I'm not hearing that stab right there. Let me check over here. Okay, it is playing there. What about right here? It is playing here too in the bass drop, but it's not playing here in the drop. Mostly because this guy right here is kind of taking over, and the chord is taking over as well, it seems like, and then over here as well. Okay, but then we have the clap fill, impact, and then here, main chords. I think we're still getting those, although it's not that big of a deal if we aren't, or a little vocal shot right here on the rap. Or maybe it's the same as this guy. Same thing as that guy. Okay, so what's going on here? If we listen, okay, one thing I want to draw your attention to is that, the concept of punks, and then we'll move on. But here we have punks. And punks, again, they're basically structured ear candy. It's short for punctuation points. And because if you think of like almost like a grammar of 8 bars, like punctuation and grammar, but grammar of 8 bars, you can imagine like something happening at the halfway through, something happening at the end. There's always something that happens at the end, but something happening halfway through, and then even within those, in between those. So here would be like around what I would call the 6-bar mark, and here this is around the 2-bar mark, and then of course the entry. And so you have these kind of important structural moments: the entry, the 4, the 8, and then in between those, the 2 and the 6. And if we play this, you'll see that that there's a hierarchy to this. That there is like more important sounds happening at the more important structural moments. So the most important are typically going to be the 4 and the 8, sometimes the entry too, but then less important, you could say, would be the 2 and the 6. So if we see what plays around there, you'll see that there's, again, a hierarchy to it. So right here at the chords play right there, you know? So these are chords. But then what plays at the 4? Let's see. Okay, so we get the vocal shot and then the bass entry. So chords, so I'm going to color these my colors. So here's going to be the kind of pinkish, purple-ish magenta for the chords. Vocal is going to be blue, and then here's going to be a vocal at the end too. But there's also just like an edit right here too. Whoa. So right here. Okay, and so you can see the drama here. Like the thing that's most important is going to be like a vocal. But these are, I would say these are relatively equal, but still vocal's going to be the king of the track, you know? So here we have a vocal at the 4 and the 8. And then here we have chords in between those at the 2 and the 6. And then there's other little sounds playing in between those, you know? And so those are more incidental sounds. And so, you know, we'll have, let's just look at it. So watch this. A little drum thing here playing at the kind of 1 almost, like at literally the first bar. And then here we have a little bit of a kick roll that takes us into the chords, or a kick fill. That gets accented, the 2 right here gets accented with that little bomb. And then we have a little bit of space, but it gets filled with some things. So we have that kind of clap bomb. And then another big important thing happening right there at the 4 right here, but we can even map these. Like, so if I map this up here, if I put this up here, and then, so again, just copying these over now, but you can see how structured this is. And so for me, even the color scheme right here is kind of just showing the hierarchy, because drum punks are kind of going to be the least important typically, because those part of the groove. But the most important hooks are going to be the vocals or like the hooks. And so here's the most important hook of vocal at the 4 and the 8. And then here you have a chord at the 2 and the 6. And then you have the drum kind of punks and fills in between those, you know? And so it's a really good example of not just punks literally playing almost every bar in this case, but the important ones happening at the key punk moment. So the P2, so punk at the 2 bar mark, P4, P6, P8. But yeah, and then nested within that is the structure of it. And so really good example. Now here's the question though. So now we're going into the B section with the vocal lift. Is that punk structure going to remain? Probably. Because what's going to happen, and I highly recommend this, is if you're working on a drop and you're going to play a big vocal on top of the drop, then everything needs to be written around that. A phrase that I like to use is everything comes from the hook. And that means like almost everything. A bass line that you write, the rhythm in the drums, if you're going to do some kind of percussion, needs to be done in the context of the vocal, because you want to create a general level of cohesion across the track. You don't want things clashing, especially with the main thing, with the hook. And so these punks and stuff were probably written in the context of the vocal playing over the drop to make sure that everything is nice and cohesive. And so let's just see. Let's just see how it plays, and let's see if these actually kind of play out. One thing I do want to put on here that I didn't is the bass shots right here. So for example, I'm just going to kind of take over this guy like that. So we got those little bass stabs too. So this is kind of the complete set of the ear candy, you could say, but I prefer punks because punks have, again, the idea of structure built in, 2, 4, 6, 8, and then it also has 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, and then it also has hierarchy built in as well. But let's see if this continues. So boom, we get the bass stab. So now we're getting a little bit of a reverse vocal into the vocal. So I'm just going to go like this, rev. Maybe I'll just color it something different. So here we get that little rim kind of hit. It's not as dramatic, it doesn't sound like. Oh, no, it is the same. Okay, and then here, nothing, just day. We still getting the kick roll, or I'm sorry, the double kick. So I'm going to duplicate this all over. Let's duplicate the double kicks over. Let's duplicate this over, and let's see if all this remains, and it probably will. So we're getting that. Getting the kick roll right there. Where's that? It's in a vocal gap. Make my day. And we're getting the chords. We're getting the impact. But we don't have these. I need to take these out. So just like that. Get the impact. We're getting the clap fill. Notice how the clap fill is kind of accenting pieces of the vocal. Make. So it's happening on the make and it's happening on the day. Right? Intentional. Like before I was talking about intentional sequencing of sound. This is what it looks like at the professional level. Like all of these sounds work with this vocal, but they all work also by themselves as an interesting sequence, completely alone, without a main hook on top. Bass stab again. Getting that vocal shot. We're also getting the wide bass shot right here. I think this guy's playing on the 16th. Yeah, he is. So I'm going to move these guys earlier because these are all just accenting what the vocal is doing. And that's what I mean by everything comes from the hook. So this is a really sophisticated example of punks, not because there's so many punks, but because they also completely come from or are derived from the vocal in the drop here. And hopefully that's as clear as day for you to see this right now. So bass entry. Okay, rim shot, bass stab. Double kicks. Chords. Impact. Now this chord impact right here is also triggering the edit. A little bit of a glitch in the vocal. The chord stab starts to reverb out or at least hold, so I could just kind of pull that out a little bit. And then actually maybe we can go to right there because then it kind of low passes down or goes away. Another little thing right here where it opens, but also there's this kind of nice like either tape stop or maybe it's a cutoff on the bass. Sounds like some kind of just maybe bass shot that pitches down there. Although it's hard to tell. It could be a pitch bend on the bass. So none of that right here. Cool. And man, like that's pretty sophisticated right there. But simple at the same time. Like if you listen to it, it's like that's really simple. But underneath the hood, when you dive in, like you can see the level of intention. And you can see the meticulous attention to detail there in terms of the sequencing of sounds. It's intentional, but it's also very meticulous. All right, so now we're going into the main break and build. So let's map this. So main break and build. Okay, now let's hop back over to the checklist here. So HG1 equation, yes, because the hook from the bass drop, the hook from the break is coming over the groove from the bass drop. This is the one that we're getting right here. And then, so these are not really applied. We're not going to get into that. A section, B section, is there a little bit of an edit between these? Let's see. So just right here, a little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit of a solid A-B edit to prepare the listener to go into the A section, to go into the B section. Punk said it's ear candy. We just broke that down. Full development. I'd say that the bass, let's see. Yeah, that's mostly sub. When we get into the drop, the bass is going to be a little bit more open. There you go. And so we're getting a full development, at least in the bass. Anything in the drums? No, if anything, again, a stripping back of the drums, especially the glitch stuff that happens, because we're definitely getting an entry here. Because otherwise it would be too busy. Again, you can hear the kind of like beat repeat stuff. But all these little sounds here are kind of still over there, but a lot of the drum glitch is not in the drop right now. It'd be too busy. So now getting into the main break and build, what are we trying to do? Well, here we're going to take away what they want, the hooks over the groove in some way. We're just going to separate them, typically by stepping the groove down in many different ways. The hooks over groove is a drug that they are addicted to now. Here, you gave them a hit. They like it. They want it. They want some more of it. To quote Tim McGraw, I guess, in the context of Tech House. But anyway, and then here we want to take it away to build tension. We're taking hooks over groove to build tension. But when we take it away, then we just double down on that tension and just say, hey, we're going to give it back to you over here. So the main idea of the main break and build is to break things down, especially the groove, and then build things back up. And so you get this kind of V taper, down and then up. And that's really the most important high-level thing. So we'll hear how that's done. And in this track, I think, is a flawless example of breaking things down and building things up. Just textbook, but done, again, in a creative way. So let's start breaking it down. All right, so here we're going to get, obviously, the beats and the bass. And so this is what I call a strip. A strip is just where you have kick, bass, hook, for the most part. So let's go back and get the vocal wrap right here. Let me just see something really quick. Now, the interesting thing here about is heavy sidechain. That's really cool. So this right here is going to be the first 8 bars in the main break and build, and this is going to be the strip. And this is going to be the first step down, right? So here we have let's do MBB, strip. So here we have exciting drum stuff, full groove. But here we step down in the groove. Why? Because we remove the top end energy. And that's the first thing here in the main break and build is how are you transitioning into the main break and build? You could do a high pass, you could do a strip. That's what they're doing right here. And so, or you could do a cliff dive, which is what they did back over here momentarily. Really slowing things down for a second. But here they're just going into a strip, and that is the step down. So I'm going to take all this stuff because it's basically the same thing, and then we're just going to tab over it like that. Okay, so V taper down then up. And so we'll see if they're doing that. So they're definitely doing staging down. And then when you have the strip right here, again, a strip is going to be kick, bass, hook typically. You could also just do kick, bass, kind of atmosphere or nothing, just kick, bass for a little bit. But here they have the main hook on top. Let's hear what else is going on. So these guys are kind of going still. So this right here, the kick fill right here, we don't have the bass, the wide bass stabs, but we are getting these stabs. Hear that little kind of noise blast right there? Okay, and then here we are getting a drum lift. So tops lift here. So I'm going to color this just purple for strips. So strip, just the kick. Now this also plus has the glitches from earlier. The drum glitches in there. You can hear that. Even has this little rim shot right there. Even has the clap fill right here. Cool. Okay, so now they're stepping down again, all right? And so this is what I would call the kind of break section. You could think of this as like almost like a bridge too, because of the way that it's stepping down, because this right here is the break or the basement, because this is going to be the lowest energy point. Now these words right here describe the energy of the groove. Words break, the basement. It's the lowest energy point, at least in terms of the groove. But for the hooks, it's also typically where you can start showcasing something. And so here you can hear the vocal is going to get showcased. So this is going to be the sing vocal right here. Really cool down effect on here. Just sounds some kind of like, it sounds literally like the pitch going down on a beat repeat sound. So this is going to be like pitch down effect. But this is perfect because this is effects communicate exactly what the energy levels are. And so here, this kind of white noise blast kind of is stepping down. It's accenting that step down. Listen to the resonance on the filter. It's going down. That is explicitly communicating the energy level to the listener. And that's why I love effects. Like, you know, you can always do this in different creative ways, but you could have like a creative effect like this pitch down thing. Like that thing, that's creative. That's cool. It's not like your standard white noise that you just drag and drop in. But even if you did get white noise or some kind of effect out of a sample pack, it's always going to strengthen the emotion, you know, even if you just tuck it in a little bit in terms of level. And so there's nothing wrong with effects. Like they specifically tell the listener what to feel. It's emotional clarity. It's energy clarity. And if they're not there, people just won't feel it as strongly. So it's not really a matter of should I use effects or not. It's in that particular moment, am I feeling what I need to feel? Am I signaling the drop of energy for the listener? You know? And yeah, you're kind of spoon feeding them in that way, but you want to, you know, you want to kind of tell them what to feel. So here we go. And you find out if you do that. So here, we're getting no low end now. And that's what I mean by stepping down in the groove. Here we step down by removing the top end. And that is a step down. But the low end is still there. And that is, people are still moving on the dance floor more than they would if the low end was not there. So yes, this is a step down, but it's not the main step down. When you go from here, the strip into the break right here, the basement, that's the main step down because you're taking the low end away. That's where the groove is cut, and people are just kind of shuffling rather than dancing. That's really cool. It sounds like this bass line has like a slow, they're playing with a slow pitch envelope sometimes. That's really cool. Either the pitch envelope or a pitch bend itself. That's really cool though. Okay, so what do we got? We got beats here. This is no kick. We definitely have the bass right here. Let's bring that in. You can see though that there's still a significant low end. So I'm going to call this shelf down because it doesn't seem like a filter. It's more of a shelf. Because if we look over here, actually over here would be a little bit clearer. You can see the level of the bass, which is right around -6 here in the spectrum. But when we get over here, the bass is still there. Like the low end is still there, but it's just not as loud. See, it's not at -6. You know, so maybe there is like a little bit of a filter right there up to like 100 or so. But all right. All right, so we're still getting these kind of bass stabs over here. Let's get these in. So. Oh, snap. We're actually switching over not to those rhythmic bass stabs, but we're going back to these guys right here. So, yep, so we got that wide stab right here, and it sounds like these are now playing every 2 bars once again. And now, of course, you can hear kind of like pads in the background, so some kind of atmospheric stuff, which is definitely something to do in the break because you want to create that vibe. You just want to open things up. You can hear the string in there too. Let's get the string in. Kind of a cool E-piano sound. That whole, it might be from the original. I don't know, but yeah, it's got an interesting resonance on it. So, for example, if we just Just really hitting like 500 hertz there. Just kind of cool. Okay, so all this this continues. Now, at this point, we're going to get a change because this is now down. And what we need to do next is start moving up. And so the question is, how are they going to start going back up? So the whole point of the main break and build is to go from lowest to highest, lowest energy state to highest energy state to create that huge contrast. And so we saw that the down energy steps right there. So let's check that off. Here we're just at the turning point. The turning point is that turning point from down energy here to moving into up energy. This is a very subtle turning point. There's not any definitive commitment or statement being made. Like, for example, if you're going to bring in the kick or bring in a reese or bring in more drums or bring in a riser, but you will hear a change in the vocal. Check it out. See, this is just going to be a Vox rep. Okay, and so now we're starting to get into a tension section because we're starting to get some vocal repetition right there. So we're getting this guy right here again. Okay, we're getting the stab still. So string, the kind of pad is still there. You can hear that the Vox rep is kind of growing as well. You can hear something like Endless Smile on there. Reverb doesn't matter. The cool thing about this is definitely a repetition, but it's like a performed repetition, which is really cool. It's not like a DAW repetition where you're kind of duplicating the the vocal. This is performed. I like that. Now, another thing you can hear is that the bass cutoff is opening, which is a kind of a riser because as you let in more higher frequencies, you get that rising feeling. So, okay, there we go. But again, you can hear the, let's put this on here because now we're going back into the rap-ish type of thing. Stabs are still there. Sounds like the pad goes away, maybe the string too. Okay, so all of this is just really growing. So I'm going to just color, this is just like, all of this is just growing. Like you got a high pass on there. You've got just reverb on all of this. Maybe we'll just all color this like a yellow for excitement. So this is just super growing. Cool. And then, cool. So if we, wait a minute, let's go to this yellow. Okay, cool. So coming back over here, turning point. There's a turning point. It's not really signaled, but obviously this is now moving into the up section, right? And so here we're going to get build 1, which is kind of where you start to build slowly. Did I mark that right? Wait a minute. Okay, cool. And then here, this is going to be, no, that was wrong. So this is build 1 where it's slow. This is going to be build 2 where it's fast. Right? It's just it's just exponential, in other words. But if we play here, so definitely have a basement, a lowest, and then clearly we have up energy. There's a rep. There's no roll. There's no kick roll, clap, snare roll, crash roll, whatever. There's definitely rise. It just everything's going up and everything's kind of growing. And so yeah, they have mostly these, the rep, the riser, and then a growing. And then the transition is going to be different. This is going to be different than what came before. So listen. So this is a pipo, but it is, they do have with payoff extension. So payoff extension. Payoff extension is where you're going beyond where someone would otherwise expect the drop to land, which would be right here. So this is just extended for about 2 bars. The key thing about an extension is that you just don't want to mess it up too much. You're shifting the listener into a different time zone. And, as a DJ, if you're traveling, you're going to different time zones, you're getting lag. And so the most important thing is that if you're going to extend things beyond where they're expected to come in, you just want to count it off for the listener so that everybody knows when things are coming back in. Otherwise, it's just going to create confusion. And you can see right here, something rhythmic, the bass comes in, which is a signal that happened before. So we're going to know when that drop is going to be properly landing. But let's see what happens. So here we get the building tension, right? And then that gets interrupted. So we have the building pattern that gets interrupted. So we have a pipo. This is going to be the payoff of sorts, although we're not going to get like a massive payoff here. And then we're going to explode into the drop. We get a really kind of cool kind of chop into it, but let's freaking play it rather than me just describing it. Show, don't tell, right? All right, so let's get this in there. That's super cool. All right, so this is just playing 8th notes, so let's just throw this on here. Bump, bump. I'll just loop around. There we go. So this kind of like washes in, we say, rather than washes out. Cool, and then we get this kind of cool bass fill right here. That kind of happened before, so we'll just color this like a different, like this right here. And then we'll do bass fill. Super cool buzz on that sound. Do you hear that? Kind of reminds me of the Tinny Gessler last drop in a way, or like the way that she does all those drops is so cool, but very modern sound or thing to do. I love that. And then here, okay, cool. And then we'll figure this out. You can see I just brought the first drop over to the second drop. And producers really get freaked out about that. They think they have to reinvent the whole wheel or create a whole second song or something in the next drop. But the thing is, like, you got to understand what storytelling is here. Storytelling is introducing someone to something cool here, breaking that up and teasing its return, and then giving it back to them. So give them what they want, take it away, give it back to them. What do they want? They want hooks over groove. So here we're introducing the groove, introducing the hooks. And that's why right here, the real story begins, because they're getting hooks over groove. You separate hooks over groove, you bring hooks over groove back. And that's the story. That's the simple story. If you can understand arrangement at the highest level like that, give them something cool, take it away, give it back, you're going to make effective arrangements. Pretty much. At least at the high level. It all depends on, are you giving them something cool or not? Like there's that aspect to it for sure. But this is an arrangement breakdown. So we're looking at things a more high level. Obviously, all this stuff is, I think, super cool. But it's checking off the high level boxes. Give them what they want, take it away, give it back to them. And don't reinvent the wheel. Otherwise, it's going to be bait and switch. I give you something cool here. I build tension, then I give you something else. Well, that's not what I wanted, right? That's bait and switch. And so here, not bait and switch. Here is going to be giving us what we want, but going to be elevated in some way. It's going to be slightly elevated. So the same underlying structure, just elevated in some way. All right. So let's come back over here. We got the pipo transition into HT2, a little bit of a payoff extension. Is there an elevation over break 1? Huge, absolutely. If we just, elevation just means is it lifted? Is it bigger? Is it developed over and above what came before? So here's break 1, here's break 2, and a break just generally. But if we listen right here, and then here, obviously, this is building more tension because of the amount of growing that's going on there. And so that is an elevation. Okay, cool. So they are doing payoff extensions. I have no payoff extensions in here with the asterisk, with the optional asterisk, just because it's really easy to mess up. But you can see right here, this vocal's counting it off, and then that bass signals when everything's going to return, because that bass was used as a signal earlier as well. So if we look over here, that bass right there, and then is it used here? Yeah. There you go. I just didn't mark it. Let's get this in right here. So bass fill right there. And so that is a signal to the listener like, hey, we're rolling, literally rolling into the drop through the bass. It's so cool. And so then that gets reused right there. And so the listener knows they've been trained at this point. Okay, now the drop's starting. And so it's been counted off, recycling the kind of drop signal and then going into the drop. Okay, cool. So, all right. So here we've got that open bass thing. So I really remember this. I'm not sure if someone knows where this really started, but when I really heard that being used a lot was in Toxic. That was probably the first by Chris Lake and Reggie Band. But yeah, that's where I really first heard it. And so now we get that vocal chop going. So let's check. So everything is it all still here? We got the bass shot. Yep. Are we going to get the kind of drum hit? The rim hit? Yep. We're going to get the wide kind of bass plucks. Double kick. Are we going to get the chord? Are we going to get the impact? Yep. Are we going to get the clap fill? Yep. Are we going to get the bass stab right here? Yep. Okay. I'm going to put the vocal chop onto this channel. So this is going to be Vox chop. There we go. So all the same things is just slightly elevated from that entry here on the bass. And then also this vocal chop that's just kind of playing throughout. And then let's see. So we still have the vocal shot right here. Bass right here. Yep, we got the wide bass hit. Okay, we got the rim. We got the bass stab. Ooh, okay. Now we're getting some cool things happening on the chop. So this is gonna wash. Let's do wash out a little bit. Again, we're getting the washout. Or I'm sorry, we're getting the impact. We're getting the chords. Clap. Here we have an edit. So here there's going to be no kick. So on this guy right here, so no kick. So here we're getting the main chord stabs. And then that just washes. Interesting place to wash out. And then it just goes out, and then we have the reverse again. There is no big open bass on the entry coming here for the B section, but I'm going to rename this 2A. This is going to be 2B. And then this is going to be groove and ear candy and Vox chop. Awesome. So we got the entry. And now we're going to get the call response vocal with the effects on it. Title line, drum hit, bass stab, double kick. Ooh, now we're getting some more of the drum glitches. You hear that? Let's see if we get that over here. And did that happen over here too? Whoa, there's definitely a tops lift right here. Tops lift. You can hear that. So right here. But here. Yeah, so this is bringing in the drum texture from before. So I'm actually going to create a channel for that. So this is going to be like drum glitch texture. So yeah, because that is a big lift. Interesting. That's really cool. So here it's coming in the B sections. And then here it's all throughout the intro. That's sweet. I really like that. And then here in the B section, it's getting lifted right there too with the drum glitch texture. This grid is giving me a headache, so I'm just going to right click up here and go to insert time signature just to get the grid back online. You can see that now looks a little bit better. Same thing as before, right? Not reinventing the wheel, but just giving us the cool things that we liked before. So here we have the glitch textures going through. Here we have the beats and then the bass line. Let's just kind of duplicate these out, see what else is here. Okay, seems like all right, I'm not going to map too much of the outro, but so there is a little white noise thing that I didn't really map, which is that okay, that's just gonna be all caught in the freaking glitch texture because it's just the outro. But woo, all right, what a track. Super cool track. I love. There's like these two extremes of production. Is you've got the simple high level, and then you've got this kind of meticulous, detailed execution down below in the kind of micro production. So it's simple macro production and then detailed, meticulous micro production. Like looking at the punk structure here in the drops, making that all work, keeping the hierarchy and doing that in a way that works with the hook on top is a lot of work. You know, some producers, like you've been producing 10, 20 years, this would just be effortless to do this in a way. Like, you know, you kind of know exactly what you want it to feel, but if you're an up and coming producer, you have to put a lot of conscious effort into making something like this happen. Number one, you have to be aware of all these little sounds, right? What drum sounds to go where? Like, where should I put a synth? Where should I put a vocal? What vocal should I put? What synth should I put? Well, I want to put a vocal on top. How is that going to work with the things? Do you see there's a lot of things that need to work together. And so if you work top down, if you understand top down, this can start to become manageable and you could do something that sounds really good. So if you start with your basic groove, like your drums and your bass should absolutely be written to whatever vocal is going to be playing. Everything comes from the hook, you know? And so if you start with a basic drum beat and your vocals, you write a bass line to it, that's going to be the bare minimum. You've got your basic groove, you got your hook on top. And then all this stuff right here is like, if you think about it in terms of punks, which is a really helpful structural idea, is like maybe I'm going to do an edit at the 8-bar mark. Okay, cool. Maybe next I'm going to take care of what can I do at the 4-bar mark, you know, and then maybe something at the 2, maybe something at the 6, but all the while kind of chunking down in terms of importance or significance. And then if you wanted to fill in the in-between space with like drum punks, like that's what mapping this stuff out teaches you, you know, and hopefully when I'm breaking this all down, I'm also giving you the concepts. Like, you know, you can map this out, but you might not be able to think yet in terms of a hierarchy. You know, the importance of the vocal, the importance or the relative less slightly importance of the chords, or even the less importance of the drum fills in between, you know, or the structural moments that need to be accented. And so hopefully that helps in terms of really helping you map out something and then organize it. And then from there, now you could develop a workflow. And how am I going to actually execute this? How am I going to do this? And if you follow the sequence, if you start out from the basic things, drums, vocals, simple drums, simple vocal, write the bass line, and then start to move down the hierarchy in terms of punks, you can write something that is cool, that is catchy, that is cohesive, that is busy but not too busy, but that has a cool sequence of sound that all makes sense. You know? And so again, if you're a professional producer, this would become effortless because you're just immediately responding to what works and what doesn't. You've just absorbed so much music, you've made so much music. But for up and coming producers, that's not the case. They have to approach this in you guys have to approach this in a very deliberate way, and just learn the concepts, apply the concepts until they become second nature and automatic. So yeah, this track is a really good example of blending those two extremes of super simple high level. Because look at this, right? What do we got? We got drums, we got introducing the bass, a cool little section where you've got that big chord stab, the drums low pass up, the big vocal comes in. You're right, the high level is what the listener can hear and understand. Everything else that we mapped out is they feel it, they don't really hear it. But it's there for the ear candy, it's there for the micro interest. But on the high level, on the macro level, it's very simple. So we got that big kind of epic entry into the break, the drums come up, and then the big vocal, the big rap vocal. And then now we're going into a build, we're going to get the singing vocal. Very simple. Rap vocal to singing vocal. Not difficult. Then we go into the drop. We get the full groove, drums and bass. And then for the first 16 bars, it's mostly just groove plus all the little punks that we mapped out. But that's just vibe. That's just feel. The listener's just getting hit with this little ear candy. And then in the second 8 bars, it's very simple. Boom. You get that vocal lift. And then we get into the main break and build. Then what happens? Strip plus the rap vocal. And then we're going to get into the singing vocal. And then the singing vocal starts to rep through the build. And then all the other build stuff. And then in the last drop, we're getting hit with the exact same drop as before, but there's the kind of offbeat kind of vocal chop, or the 8th note vocal chop on top. And then there's that little bass entry that's just more exciting. And then the B section's basically the same, just lifting with the main vocal. So the macro intro story is so simple. And it should be, because that's what the listener tracks. They're not tracking all the little things. That's just hitting them with the ear candy. They're not sitting there intellectually going, then there's that rim shot. They're not tracking that. They're just getting hit with it, And then the micro level detail. Again, that's kind of my big takeaway is just that the simple macro interest, and then the kind of more complex, sophisticated micro level interest. Very cool. Any other thing? The other thing I like is I actually really like the payoff extension in this guy, and how it and I like the bass signaling, the drop, and how it just feels like you just roll into the drop with that low end. But I like that little vocal chop on top right here. There was a period of time where a lot of tracks were kind of doing this. And if I come over here, I was playing tracks earlier. Is there a way to go to recently played? I don't think so. Anyway, left to right is one of them. Like, it doesn't want to play. Right, so that is just a rep into a vocal, or I'm sorry, a rep into a drop. And there's other examples too I was looking up, but anyway, but I really like that. Also, what I really like is the main break and build. Like, this is a really good textbook main break and build for a producer, just with the strip, and then going into the basement with the showcased vocal, the basement groove with the showcased vocal, and then build slow, build fast. The one thing I would caution new producers against is payoff extension, but whatever, try it, see if it's cool. Instead, what you could do too is just this kind of standard pipo thing right here. That's awesome. Yeah, that's just keeping it standard. But that's it. All right. So simple macro, complex micro. Just a really cool balance in there. So that's the breakdown. If you've got your own insights or questions about this track, leave them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching the breakdown. I will see you in the next one. Peace.